Hey Pokemon Masters, Birdkeeper Toby here. Gotta catch them all. Throughout my time as a Pokemon Master, I have trained many different species of Pokemon. Back in February, I made a video talking about one team from each of the various regions I've travelled. Of course, I've travelled all the regions of the Pokemon world many times before. So many times that I've at least travelled each region with one of each starter Pokemon, and sometimes even depositing my starter Pokemon. So today I want to follow up on that video because so many of you liked it, and I want to hear about some of your favourite teams in the comments, but I'm going to tell you about one team from each different region that I've traversed, all the way from generations 1 through 7. And it doesn't matter whether that's in the original game or the remakes, just one of each region, so a Kanto team, Johto, so on. And also because I've travelled the regions of the Pokemon world so frequently, I put a big emphasis on trying to play in more interesting ways now, in not going with a conventional starter Pokemon or limiting my team in some way. So let's start up with Kanto. And those of you who have been following me on my Instagram, bird_keeper_Toby, know that that is where I post photos of my journey. I don't do Let's Plays on the channel, so if you want to see me like playing the game and follow my progression with teams and stuff, that's sort of the best way to do that. And in my most recent run through in Kanto, I was playing Pokemon Yellow on the Virtual Console, and I've played Pokemon Yellow so many times. It's the first Pokemon game I ever played. And so I thought, do you know what? I'm ready to play this game without Pikachu as my starter Pokemon. Or without picking up a Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander. I also know that with Pokemon Yellow, Brock's Gym is actually annoyingly difficult. There's only really two options for battling it. One is to get a Caterpie and evolve it up into a Butterfree that learns Confusion in Viridian Forest. And then I have done many times, your other option pretty much is to get a Mankey. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have Mankey as my starter Pokemon? So after catching a Mankey and depositing my Pikachu, my adventure began. And Mankey swept through the Pewter Gym, the Cerulean Gym, and around Cerulean City, I also caught a Venonat. Now, because Mankey had been the only Pokemon on my team up until that point, it actually evolved into Primeape pretty quickly. And I loved having these two furry spherical Pokemon. They were quite cute and they made for a good team together. And I was considering playing the whole game with just these two Pokemon to see how over-leveled they'd become. And because I was battling every single trainer and exploring every single route, this is part of a quest to get all 150 original Pokemon with the little Game Boy icon. As a part of that mission, it meant I was capturing absolutely everything and exploring every route possible. I'd really gotten to know the Kanto region over the last few months. This was in fact my most recent run through. And yes, of course I did have my starting Pokemon Primeape, and my Venonat eventually evolved into a Venomoth, but there was also a third Pokemon I caught, which I wasn't really expecting to. Again, another spherical Pokemon, Ghastly. By the time I got to the Pokemon Tower, the rest of my team was so over-leveled, but Ghastly was very much behind, and I spent a lot of the game trying to play catch-up with Ghastly, and that was especially difficult seeing as Ghastly doesn't really learn that many good moves in Generation 1, with his best move really being Nightshade. Got it up to a Haunter, traded it with a friend to make it a Gengar, and I defeated the whole Elite Four with just these three Pokemon. Gengar, Venomoth, and Primeape. And I gotta say, playing Pokemon Yellow in this way was an absolute blast. I've now, of course, finished that run through and traded them all up to the current generation, as well as having caught pretty much every Pokemon that's available in Pokemon Yellow on this same quest. So that was a lot of fun. Region number 2 was Johto, and I played it after just finishing Breath of the Wild, so I was in a very Legend of Zelda mood. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to nickname my Pokemon after Zelda characters? Again, having this emphasis on using Pokemon that I hadn't really used before, I know in most of my journeys I usually go for Totodile or Cyndaquil, so I thought wouldn't it be a cool idea to get a Chikorita called Link. And being the bird keeper that I am, I realised I'd never really used a Hoot before. Now I know there is an owl in Zelda called Kaepora Gabora, hope I pronounced that right, but I decided that name was too much of a mouthful, and because of the way Noctowl rotates its head, it kind of reminded me of Majora from Majora's Mask. So we had Link the Chikorita and Majora the Hoot. I also in the early game caught a Wooper, which I named after the Zora King from Breath of the Wild, but sadly Wooper couldn't really keep up and ended up just being in the box. I caught the Sudowoodo blocking my path and called it the Great Deku. And then when I got to Ecruteak City, I realised that I could start exploring lots of different areas. You don't actually have to do a lot of Johto chronologically, so I decided to head over to Mahogany Town. There I caught a Flaffy in the wild, which I called Laneru after the big thunder dragon, and that quickly evolved into an Ampharos. By this point, of course, Hoot was a Noctowl, and Link had already become a Meganium. And I took out Price's gym as the 5th gym, which was a lot of fun. Then I headed back across the other way and battled, well, myself, Birdkeeper Toby. That was more than a little trippy. And headed back to the World Islands where I caught Naruto the Horsey. At this point I'm feeling pretty good. I have a pretty strong team. I evolve Horsey up into Seadra and then later get the items to evolve it into a Kingdra. But on my journey something special happens. Raikou appears in the wild with some of the other legendary dogs. And I decide, you know what? Why not? I rarely ever use legendary Pokemon on my team. And on Instagram, when I was posting pictures of the final team, I was getting a lot of slack for using legendary Pokemon. I've been playing Pokemon for years, using lots of different teams. the point of having the Pokemon in the game is that you can use them, so why not? I decided to go for it. And because I already had the electric type Lanayru, I decided to call Raikou Nehru as a sort of replacement, because sadly Amphross's level just wasn't high enough. At this point I had one space on my team left, and I decided to go with the box art legendary of Heart Gold itself, Ho-Oh, which I called Valoo. I then of course took it to the Elite Four and actually got a little bit stuck battling Lance. I battled Lance about 8 times and kept on dying and having to restart, thinking there was no hope, until eventually my friend PD Winnell came over and helped me beat Lance in one go. And that is the first time in a long time I've needed help battling the Pokemon League. I guess I was just really underleveled. But again, just an interesting way to play, and I love the nicknames. I don't use nicknames very often in Pokemon games, so that was a blast. Now that you're all judging me for needing help beating the Pokemon League and using legendary Pokemon, yeah, now I say it out loud, it sounds really lame. Let's move on to Generation 3, Hoenn. And right before Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out, I was actually replaying Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald all at the same time. Yes, all at the same time. My Sapphire and Ruby version, for some reason, on last save, happened to be at about Norman's gym, but I had already traded those Pokemon up to the Power Park and then further on up to the current generation. So I had these copies of Ruby and Sapphire that were just sort of stuck halfway through the game, and I started Emerald version with a Pokemon that I hadn't used too often. Trico. Despite the fact that Trico was my first original starter back when I first got Ruby and Sapphire, I hadn't really used it that much since. I was like, okay, we'll go for Trico and we'll go for some other Hoenn favourites that I haven't really used. Ralts in the first route, which by the way was male, and because Gallade didn't exist, it now means that I've got a male Gardevoir. I got myself an Aron from Granite Cave and a Whismur from Van and Turf Tunnel. I even caught myself a Wailmer, because why not? And of course, all of these Pokemon evolved to their final evolutionary forms. And there was one more interesting Pokemon in there, which was Baltoy, which I actually traded to myself from one of my Pokemon Ruby or Sapphire to Emerald version a little bit before I should have been able to get it. And this is just because I didn't want the Baltoy to be too underleveled to the rest of my team when I caught it regularly. So I got this Baltoy and evolved that into a Claydol. I'd never used Claydol before, but Claydol's pretty cool. And with this team, I defeated the Hoenn League not once, not twice, but 3 times across all 3 of the different games. I thought it would be a really cool idea to have a reservoir of legendary Pokemon in Pokemon Bank. And this is only about 2-3 months before Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out. So I finished the Pokemon League, caught all of the Regis, Rayquaza, Groudon, Kyogre, all the other legendary Pokemon, Latios and Latias. I then traded the team over to Ruby and blitzed through Ruby version and did the same thing. And then did Sapphire and did the same thing. And then 3 months later, I caught all of the ridiculous amount of legendaries available in Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, meaning I have boxes of, like, the Reggie Pokemon. Boxes of them. Moving on, Generation 4. Sinnoh is also one I am currently playing. I stream it every single Tuesday at 7 PM BST. At the moment, the run-through I'm doing is just with Bibarel, which is a lot of fun. But that's not the adventure I want to talk about. The adventure I want to talk about is one that I got inspired to play back in my first year on the channel. I was working alongside Game Boy Luke on a video all about Rotom, and I kept on obsessing about how cool it would be to use a Rotom on your team, but you can't do that in Diamond and Pearl because you can't get Rotom until the post-game. However, in Platinum you can get it after beating only the second gym, and I thought, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be a lot of fun? It took me a whole year to get around to actually buying a copy of Platinum. And once I did, I decided to live it up by playing with my favourite Sinnoh starter, Turtwig, which of course eventually evolved into a Torterra. I caught that Rotom pretty early on. I got the fossil Pokemon Crandinius, which evolved into a Rampardos. I slapped some honey on a tree. I also slapped some honey on the tree, hoping like maybe there's this 1% chance I'm going to get a Munchlax, and I didn't. I got a female Combee instead, which is a very low chance of getting. So I got this Combee and added it to the team and decided to use Vespiquen. I decided to try something different and catch a Ponyta, which I evolved into a Rapidash. And then I did something even more out there, which I totally recommend you try. At the same time, I had lent out a copy of Soul Silver to a friend, and they had completed the Johto region but had no interest in completing Kanto. So I thought to level up my Sinnoh team, I would trade them over to Kanto and make them journey the Kanto region. And so I did. So this team that originated in Sinnoh actually ended up achieving 16 badges, as well as having an Ursaring join them. I then of course traded them back, defeated Cynthia, traded them back, and challenged Red. And the adventure for this team doesn't end there, because it continues in my run-through of Pokemon Black 2. And oh my goodness, this was a long run through. It took over a year and a half to complete just because I couldn't get enthusiastic about it. But there was a problem. I had my Platinum run through, I had my Heart Gold run through, I had all of these Pokemon that I really wanted to transfer up to the latest games, but this copy of Black 2, which I had just restarted, was the only finished Generation 5 game. This meant I had to finish this game, and I began by catching Pokemon that I would nickname after Pokemon YouTubers. True Green the Snivy, Ovi the Azurill, I had Mystic the Coughing off the Mystic Umbreon, a Raizo the Axu, PD Winnell the Deerling, and a Scrafty, obviously called Game Boy Luke. No, okay, obviously it was called Hoodlum. Hoodlum Scrafty. Anyway, so I caught this team, but I put a lot of the focus on leveling up the Azurill into Azumarill and the Snivy into Superior, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's actually, the middle evolution is one of my least favorite Pokemon, and I gained a little bit more appreciation for this run through. But, like I said, I just couldn't get enthusiastic about this run through of the game, sadly. And with all these other teams trapped in generations below that I really wanted to transfer up, I decided to borrow my best friend's copy of Pokemon Black 2 that was finished. I transferred the Pokemon up, traded the two teams along, so suddenly I had my Platinum team, my Heart Gold team, and this Black 2 team all combined together. And mixing the team up and combining some of their forces, of course, I very quickly destroyed the rest of the Pokemon League. So now, of course, I can just transfer Pokemon up freely. But if you think about it, that Platinum team means that it dealt with the Sinnoh region and all of its badges in Platinum, the Kanto region and all of its badges in Soul Silver, defeated both of those Pokemon Leagues, and then defeated another Pokemon League in Pokemon Black 2 in Unova. That is a busy team, and would also make for a very interesting Nuzlocke run-through thing. Pokemon Black Soul Platinum run, maybe? Moving on, Generation 6. Now, this run-through of Generation 6 is the one that I call the bad nickname run-through for the, well, just listen. Of course, in X and Y, you get a choice of 2 starter Pokemon. So I got a Chespin called Spikes and a Squirtle called Cannons, a Hippopotas called Yawny, and a Skiddo called Archer. I like that name a little bit. A Lucario called Palm, and a Hawlucha called Beaky. I called it Beaky. Fluff the Eevee that became a Sylveon, and then Lash, which was an Amora that of course evolved as well. Towards the end of the game, I also got 2 legendary Pokemon. I got a Xerneas, which I actually love the nickname of. I called it Comet, which I think is a great name for Xerneas. And it was about the time of a Hoopa distribution event, so Hoopa joined my team at the very end. Oh, I also think I caught a Hydreigon, which I called Trigon, but that's not really much of a nickname, and I also didn't use it much because I got it in Victory Road. This is the most Pokemon I think I've ever used in a single run-through, and again, it wasn't a run-through I was overly enthusiastic about. That said, maybe I'll just ask you next time on Instagram about nicknames, because I clearly have no idea what I'm doing. And then finally, we're on to Generation 7, the Alola region, and I am currently doing this run through and again, posting the pictures on Instagram. But to see the origins of this adventure, we actually have to jump back to one of the Virtual Console games, my Virtual Console copy of Pokemon Blue. In Blue version, I wanted to do the thing where I start the game and then ditch the starter quite early on so I can start with a different Pokemon. And so I technically started that game with a Sandshrew, and then later a Nidoran female, which I evolved very quickly into a Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen pretty much led the team, being around level 30 by the time I got to the 3rd gym, with Sandshrew being around level 18. And that was great and everything, but then I got bored of that run through as well. Not to worry, I started my copy of Pokemon Moon, and wouldn't you know it, the story of Pokemon Moon involves a trainer moving from Kanto to Alola. So I thought I'd sort of combine the run-throughs and just pretend that it's the same trainer going over. And it makes it all the more special because Sandshrew is one of those Cantonian Pokemon that has the form in there and then in Alola as well. So it really was like I was moving over from Kanto with my Kanto team. Nidoqueen is staying in the box for now because it's far too over-leveled to be playing on my team. But I started my Alolan journey with a Sandshrew that was level 18, which means it was just a high enough level to not have to worry too much about the first island, which I think is quite a boring island. It's just tutorials. But around the same time, PD Winner was over at my house helping me out with the Heart Gold run through. He knew that I love the Pokemon Stuffle. It's my favorite Alolan Pokemon, and he had managed to catch a shiny Stuffle, so he decided to trade it to me, and it was the same level as my Sandshrew. It's like I've just moved over with my Kanto form of Sandshrew, and my friend Alola's like, I'm so happy you're here, have a shiny Stuffle. So that's that run through. I have also caught a Rockruff and a Mudspray, Pokemon that I haven't really used before, and I love that all of these Pokemon, including Nidoqueen, fall into either the Rock, Ground, or Fighting categories, which kind of reminds me of the Pokemon trading card game, where all of those types are just fall under the Fighting energy. I remember back in the sets Gym Challenge and Gym Hero, Brock would have these types of Pokemon, so maybe that's the run-through I'm going for here. Maybe something with a more selective type group. Either way, I'm having a lot of fun, and if you want to follow those adventures again, follow me on Instagram. I'm hoping to have many adventures throughout my time playing Pokemon and capturing many Pokemon and having many experiences. Of course, let me know about your favorite experiences in the comment, and please subscribe for more weekly videos, Tuesdays and Fridays. You don't want to subscribe and turn the notification bell on so that you're not missing out on those Pokemon theories, top 10s, or anything else. So hi, Pokemon Masters. A massive thank you to those of you who support me on Patreon every single month, and a special thank you to the big patrons of the month, Joey Powers and Elizabeth Collins. Thank you.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.